this game for long enough to have a little like demon in the back of your mind going, yeah, okay. There was this executive. He was sitting in business class on the plane. He read the magazine. The magazine said DevOps. Now we're all doing DevOps. Okay? Yeah? A little bit. Who remembers business process? Who's old enough? Come on, my people. Yeah? CRM. Remember when banks? Big into CRM. Got to understand our customer, right? And there's so many initiatives that we have been beguiled by in the last 10, 20 years. And software engineers, so 20 years ago when I actually did work for a living, as opposed to this, and actually wrote code, it was component-based development. Anyone remember that? Yeah? Turns out that was nonsense. We made a bunch of promises about reuse and a whole bunch of things, and it didn't really come to fruition, did it? So what makes us different? I mean, that's a fair question, right? But the funny thing is that as organizations are pretty good at understanding that things are shifting and things are changing, and honestly, I thought Mark's presentation was awesome. I thought he nailed the core things, particularly in financial services, that you guys need to think about. What does it mean for you? Software engineer, the executives, no one puts up their hand, right? They're afraid of a flash mob, right? Right, and then the one or two security dudes. We're gonna have a great time talking about security guys. Guys are gonna be rock stars. But what does it mean to you guys individually? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And I'd like to link this transformation that we're going through, like in this big thing that's happening that everyone's talking. I'd like to talk a little bit more about it and why it's happening. And I'd like to link it to some of the core behaviors that you guys may have. Right? Now, salespeople have to close their eyes. Chef's not the tricky bit, okay? It's not about the tool. It's about some core behaviors that you have to start thinking about developing as the companies that you're working in and as the economy that we're working in fundamentally shifts. And I'll try and explain why that is the case. And I'll try and explain that there is no option. This change is, we literally are seeing it right now. And the good news is, if you're one of those people who put up their hands to the question, you're a software engineer, you're in a super good place, okay? So I'd like to be able to kind of tell that story a little bit for you. So, obviously you guys are all familiar with ancient Greek, yes? All the ancient Greek knowledge? No? No, wait. So I'll translate for you people. Obviously I'm fluent. So, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one thing. This is written by a guy called Locus 3,000 years ago. Turns out he didn't know a lot about DevOps, right? But this little fragment of ancient Greek has created a massive amount of thinking about these two kind of archetypes there are. Ask yourself what kind of person you were. Were you a hedgehog or a fox? So this dude, guy from London, from Oxford, said, well, if we look at all the great thinkers, you get those who focus on one big idea, and then you get focused, and then you get others that kind of focus on pulling from a number of different places. Just ask yourself what kind of person you are. And then ask, what kind of company are we? So I'm a recovering CTO. My name is Justin, hello. And I was the CTO at GE. Jack Welch is this guy's hero. So Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great. And in his book, he said, you know what, the companies that succeed are ones that have this hedgehog concept, this big idea. So Jack Welch had an awesome focus for that. And he's what Jim Collins used to call a level 5 leader. So Jack's idea was number 1 and number 2 in every market, or you leave, right? And has paid, this is the secret sauce that you guys take notes. This is the secret sauce, right? Focus on the hedgehog concept. Turns out, bullshit. Because if you look backwards, and if you look at all of the management literature, and you look at all of the predictions, whether it comes from one of my personal heroes, Tom Peters, Waterman, Collins, pick one, they don't stand up. They don't stand up to historical data. I mean, one of the other level 5 companies, these fantastic companies that Jim Collins was talking about, Fannie Mae, right? So, what's going on? Is there this like big ideas? Is there such a thing as a hedgehog concept, the big thing that companies should be focused on? And is there like a big thing that you as individual people working in these companies should be focused on? Is there something that is really at the core of what success is going to look like and feel like in the 21st century? Does that thing exist? Is the question, right? Well, this guy, Rosenweig, this is kind of a little bit in the realm of Captain Obvious. He said that, companies that are successful tend to be resilient, right? Tend to react positively to change, right? Not a super surprising thing, that is to say, unsuccessful companies probably won't be so good at adapting to change. Okay, so that's not incredibly helpful right now. But then along comes this guy. You guys read the Black Swan? You guys heard of the Black Swan, anyone? Who's heard of the Black Swan? Yeah? So this guy comes along and says, well, you know what? There are certain systems out there, and there are certain approaches where you actually become improved through damage. Right? So who has a leather satchel? Anyone got a leather satchel? Yeah, can you pull it up? Okay, so how new is it?
Like a year old.
Okay, has it become better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So this is the thing, right? So some things, like that leather satchel over there, improve through damage. So you kick it around, you chuck it under the chair, it becomes softer, it stops creaking, right? I have a leather satchel when it's like brand new, it creaks a little. Because every time you open it, it's like, Rrr. So it softens up, it improves through damage. What if we could create organizations that were improved through damage? Is that cool? Right? That's a rhetorical question. I'm assuming the answer is going to be yes. Okay? Because if the answer is no, but here's the thing, can we create organizations that are improved through damage? What does that mean? So, I think we can. Now, one of the things that you will hear later this afternoon is some of the stuff that chefs got in compliance and that sort of thing. Now, one of the things that is possible today is to break the trade-off that exists in your organizations today between kind of doing new stuff, all the innovation that Mark was talking about, but making sure it's good. Good is code for keep Mark out of jail. Okay? Compliance. Now, who sits on an enterprise risk management committee here? Anyone? Or something like it? That dude? The security guy saying no, right? So only one guy sitting on who's got an interest in risk. A couple of shy people over there. Yeah, the people that killed the project. Oh, just joking. So what do we as organizations do? We make trade-offs, right? Who thinks you are all fully compliant all the time? Yeah? Yeah, there you go. Someone give him a hug. So, we know we make trade-offs. We know we make trade-offs about how long we can wait for a certain group of service to be unpatched, right? We know we can't do these things immediately. We know that when there's new legislation that comes through, so Dodd-Frank is literally being written and redrafted as time goes on, the SEC is getting created, which is never a good sign. And all this legislation is coming, right? Can't all implement it at once, right? So we make trade-offs. Trade-offs around our compliance status, trade-offs around our security status. And we do that because if we just focused on the compliance stuff, etc., we'd like never do anything new, right? Who feels that compliance is really crowding out your ability to go to your manager and say, hey, I've got a new idea? Anyone brave enough to put their hand? Well, you're here, right? You're here for a reason. And it's one of the core ideas that we have to start understanding is that in this new world that we're in, what it means to improve through damage is not only improving through interaction with our customers, okay, to the extent that our customers damage us, but it's being able to exist in the legislative and regulatory ecosystems that we're in. Now, it turns out that if we are able to translate some of these security and compliance requirements into code, well, there stops being this trade-off between shipping compliance requirements. Let's say every single server you have has to have the following ports shut, versus in the new version of your internet banking application, you have to have red buttons instead of blue. Right now, you have separate deployment processes, right? Tell me, yes? So right now, if you want to deploy a patch, is it separate from the process required or the event required to deploy a new feature? Yes? Doesn't have to be. Because if it's all code, what we now have is we now have this convergence, this creation of a single language, a single way of describing how we interface with the world around us, which is typically in a regulatory, compliance, security kind of way, as well as how we interface with our customers, which are the features that we build. Right? Now, if we're able to translate those features into code, the security requirements into code, well, then every single time we ship a new feature, we're also shipping improvements in security. So what have we done? Every single time you find a vulnerability, every single time you find a new virus, every single time there's a new requirement that needs to be tweaked for some regulatory purpose, you're able to ship it at the same time as you're shipping features, which therefore means the faster you're shipping features, the faster you're improving your security. Said another way, the faster, the greater the focus, the pain that someone here was talking about you. We're talking about the pain in this organization driving you to be shipping remediations. That same pain drives your ability to be able to ship new features as well, because it's the same process. It's incredible. Now that is one way where we break this trade-off. We break the trade-off between newness and goodness. Where now we become as good and as secure as we are able to ship new functionality to our customer. Now this revolution, what is it that makes that possible? But the funny thing is that people have been thinking about this for some time. We like to think of ourselves as, we're software people. Software is eating the world, right? As Mark said. Coined by a guy called Mark Andreessen. Who's ever seen a picture of Mark Andreessen, by the way? Anyone seen a picture? The dude is awesome. He has the most cone-shaped head you have ever seen. It's actually a thing of beauty. But this is another good-looking guy. And he's been working on organizations and how organizations can be resilient. And the area that he's been working on is an area called highly reliable organizations. So an example of a highly reliable organization would be an emergency room. So how would it be if I have a 7-year-old son who loves sport? So if he broke his arm and you took him to the emergency room, and the emergency room said, John, run out of bandages. Right? A bad thing. Of course, I'm from the UK, so we would just write letters. You guys would sue. We would just write letters. But some organizations, if they fail catastrophically. Super bad things happen. Right? So emergency rooms are a good example. In the original research. Paramedic vans, for instance, are another example. Mine shaft operations, another example.
the original research is a really interesting one as well, which is investment banking. Right? Now, the highly reliable organizations sometimes do fail. Probably one of the most famous ones that failed was NASA. So the failure of the Columbia shuttle and the crash around that, how did that happen? Well, this guy called Quentin had a look at examples like this. And he identified a couple of attributes of what highly reliable organizations look like. Now, these are organizations that are incredibly effective at responding to change. Because when the environments happen, when things happen outside, they have to continue operating. So when there's this massive event, a massive road pileup, for instance, emergency rooms still have to be able to function. They can't only function with the median amount of patients that they were expecting. They need to be able to scale. Now, the way that these organizations do this is they're incredibly good at tracking the small failures and understanding what the signs are of those small failures. Who's had a near failure and patted themselves on the back and said, yeah, well done. Dodge that one. Right? Yeah? Organizationally, what we do, organizationally, what we're trained to do, is we're trained to pat ourselves on the back when we avoid failure. But how often do we learn from it? How often organizationally do we think about, okay, well, how did we get to the point where it was a near miss? Right? So emergency room may say, well, this time we only have 2 rolls of bandages left. It was fine. No one died. Is that too little? How do we address this in future? Things like that. So incredibly, it sounds like a really small detail, but they track these small failures, right? They resist oversimplification. So what's the average number of people on an outage call here? Okay, there's always a giggle. Like, is it more than 2 dozen? Yes?
Probably
Okay, 15. Okay. Someone else was nodding. I won't pick you out. And the question was more than 2 dozen. So clearly, it's a large number, right? It's certainly more than can do the job. What do we do when we're in those large groups? We have to simplify. We have to oversimplify. Why? Well, because you've got 15 people with different areas of knowledge. There are other things that are involved in terms of protecting personal position, things like that. So we radically oversimplify. How much do we learn from these outage calls and things? Probably not much. Is that true to say right now? So what we do is we oversimplify. Because there's some executive that we have to put up our hand and say, yeah, well, like, this is a thing, and this is how we fixed it, and yeah, oh. Okay? Now, of course, what happens in that particular environment is we don't get to the underlying causes of why we got there, right? It's very, very difficult to see how we can make that system improve through damage. So being sensitive to operations is important. Being sensitive to the people who are actually sitting at the interface between that system, how it's being used, how it's interacting with customers. So I used to run a product development team for a bank quite a long time ago. And it's just fascinating for a product developer to talk to people who literally track the detailed movements of customers, the clicks, the navigations that people make through the product, and what that does to help a product developer design their product. Of course, we call that design thinking now and a whole bunch of things. But essentially, it's being very, very sensitive to the day-to-day, the practical operations, the usage, the value that customers are finding, and how our system is standing up to it, how robust our systems are able to be. Now, you're noticing as I'm going through these things, this is seriously not rocket science, is it? Is it? This is stuff that we would all kind of agree to. And it's certainly stuff that large organizations and management consultants will help, your friends at McKinsey will come in and charge you handsomely to implement processes that do this. Now, something incredible that you will find is these individual points, these ideas of deferring to expertise, being sensitive to the operational context, looking at the small things and how you can learn from them. These are all ideas that Nathan will talk about later when he talks about DevOps. It is literally a one-to-one mapping. And so this crazy thing has happened. How we think about how to make businesses more resilient, better, more reliable, is literally being mirrored in this thing we call DevOps. Now these two presentations, by the way, are completely separate, so it's not as if, you know, there's been this discussion, and by the way, you should make sure you got this thing. Read the literature. It's this amazing matching of how the basic behaviors of making better software and making better teams that make better software match perfectly to this idea of how organizations have to function in order to be more resilient, to be more successful. Now, why is this important? So let me give you this crazy idea for a second. You know what? I don't think that features, I'm going to say a couple of controversial things. Is anyone in product development here? Any product developers? Product people, product owners? Yeah? Okay. Probably going to hate me. So, I don't think feature differentiation is a thing anymore. I don't think customers, I don't think your ability to be able to differentiate yourself from the next bank is going to be based on the features that you have in a product at any one moment in time. Is that depressing? Because I bet you're working on some cool stuff right now. And you think we're going to nail this, right? I said it again, what's the rule on it? Bad news though. What I mean by value is contingent is 20 years ago, how did we make purchase choices? We made purchase choices on the basis of information that we would research to go and find a product that matched our needs. And it took us some time. There was a cost. It's an economic cost to getting that information. A little bit closer, we came to the information economy and it became super easy to search. And now we have Google. And we search for features, right? You search for things. And you find stuff on Amazon, you find stuff on Etsy, and you find stuff on eBay, and it's awesome. The cost of search is becoming very, very low. So now what happens is it's very, very easy for customers to find exactly the product that they want. So you would therefore think, it's all about the features. It's all about getting good enough features, right? Doesn't that make sense? But here's the thing. Customers have never known what they wanted. Right? Customers have some sense of some of their needs. We have some sense of some of their needs. What are we really doing? What does the purchase relationship really look like? It's poking around in the dark. So you buy this brand new product. You bought the iPod, the first iPod. Who owned the first iPod? Yeah? Me too. You had no idea, right? This is a good iPod, this is a bad iPod, right? Poking around in the dark. But you upgraded it, and, right, and you fell in love with it, right? Now what happens if this process of I get a product, I look at it, I learn it, I like it a little, and I can switch to another product at zero cost. It's frictionless. Zero cost. So let me give you a banking example. United Kingdom, it is law that if I switch to another bank, it's zero cost. So the other bank has to essentially allow me to move all of my accounts for free. So I can just phone them up and say, hey, I'm currently with HSBC and Barclays, right? Hey, I'm moving. And they say, okay, we'll take care of it. And typically, in about 2 weeks, it's all done. 2 weeks, not exactly zero cost, but it's free. Okay? What happens when products and product switching costs are absolutely zero? I'll give you an example. I have a bad reputation in Chef, for one thing. Well, actually, many things, but I'm going to go talk about one thing. And that is, I'm a bit of a tool for that. Okay? Particularly productivity tools. It's a thing, I'm talking to people about it. Okay, I'm okay. But literally, if there's a task application out there, I've tried it. So things for doing to-dos and stuff like that, I absolutely love that stuff. Okay. Big element user of the whole thing. So what I can do is I can download an application from the App Store, put in my tasks and do a whole bunch of things and check out the thing and actually use it for like half a day. And think, nah, it's not really working. Cool, it's gone. What happens when banking is like that? Do you think that's not going to happen? Because that's happening right now. If you think fintech is the problem, right? If you think these little startup guys out there that are doing, process that are essentially doing low-cost payment transactions, aggregating information like Mint, etc. If you think they're the competition, you're looking at the wrong thing. The competition is, and the fundamental problem is that value is now being measured by our customers based on how fast they can change it. So let me give you another example. When you are shopping on the App Store, and there's an application out there, and the application is free. And it's a task application. You'll download it, you'll use it, you'll think, yeah, cool. But you'll enter into that economic exchange because you know that you can change it at zero or very little cost. Right? So your barriers to starting that process is essentially zero. It's like Candy Crush. Candy Crush is free to download, but how many of you spent, untold millions on trying to get up that flipping ladder, right? That gets you in. You can delete it anytime, right? But how does this work? What does this mean for the economy? What does this mean for your company? We've just spoken about resilience. Well, the funny thing is that if we're poking around in the dark with our customers, and if our customers are evaluating us, and if our customers are pricing our products based on this notion of, well, I want to be able to change it easily. Value is now my ability to change it. I don't want to be tied down. But it seems that what we have to do is we have to become really, really, really good at changing our products, right? Like continually. Now, if we have to become really, really good at changing our products continually, how fast does our software development process have to be? On a scale of 1 to 10? Well, literally, that is the competitive advantage that you guys as software engineers are here to talk about. But what I want you to bear in mind is it's all about the speed. Nothing else. Not even compliance. The compliance stuff doesn't matter. Why? Because your ability to improve compliance, your ability to get better at compliance is directly related to your ability to be able to fix it in the next iteration. And if the next iteration is an hour later instead of a month later, you're a lot safer than if you work for 3 months on a partially compliant application for some customers who may or may not like it, and then 3 months later, you're now 6 months behind the curve in terms of the latest security patches, requirements, blah, 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 blah. It's all about velocity. Ask yourselves in the daily practice, how do you drive velocity? Those of you that are responsible for maintaining gates in processes to slow things down, stop doing it. Cut that shit out. It will kill your business. Right? So, value is continuous. Value is no longer this idea, like in the Industrial Revolution, where value came from labor. You had 5 workers on the production line, and the salary of those 5 workers plus the cost of the machine, right, divided by how many widgets you were making, that's the cost. It doesn't work like that. The cost, the price of a thing is being evaluated based on its ability to continually change. not about features, because every single feature you create is contingent. Every single feature you create will fundamentally have to change within some time frame, in some way that you have no ability to predict. So the big roadmaps the product managers have, they will tell you themselves, super contingent. How many of you have agile backlogs and things like that? Yeah? How long are the backlogs? Light that stuff on fire. So here's the thing, what are we talking about? Well, I just said that velocity and moving fast is like super important, and it is super important. But at the core, what are we really talking about? We're kind of talking about learning, right? We're talking about learning about the customer, right? We're talking about learning how to meet the customer's needs. But are we also learning about how to change ourselves? Are we learning about how to do this stuff better ourselves? Because it's clear that there's a bunch of things that you guys have to do in new ways. And like I said before, sure, learning chef is a super good thing. And according to recent surveys, it's one of the most valuable skills you can have. Okay? But it's this process of continuous learning, right? But it's not just learning the skills, it's not just learning about what our customers want, and it's not just learning how to be fast, but I think it's learning how to learn. How good are you at learning how to operate within an organization, within your team, to be able to produce these outcomes? Do you think your teams, the teams that you're in today, are learning teams? Or are you essentially the same teams with the same skills that you had a year ago? Don't have to tell me. But you know who you are. We all have to learn as teams, because if your team is not getting better, right, then what will happen is your product will eventually fall behind. And I'll talk about this a little bit in a few minutes. We work with the two-product principle, and it's a critical part of our practice for how we drive transformation in organizations. But there are two things that you have to seriously address if moving fast and learning is to become an essential part of your practice. One is silos. What are the organizational silos that we have based on today? Where did they come from? Any ideas? I'm sorry? Tradition. Tradition, yeah, sure. So who's a fan of Charlie Chaplin? Who's seen the film Modern Times? Genius, absolute genius. If you haven't seen it, you should totally go and see it. The idea of silos comes from the Industrial Revolution. Basically, what happened was a guy called Henry Ford had this great idea. Instead of having a big pile of car parts and then having like a scrum of guys build a car, he created a production line and he had each person do one thing or very few things. So in the Charlie Chaplin film Modern Times, Charlie Chaplin is literally responsible for turning two bolts. Boop, 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 boop. That's all he did. What did Henry Ford say? Henry Ford said, you know what, I just wish that people who work for me would bring their hands to work and leave their brains behind. So what we've got is we have this idea of specialization of labor. Because we have specialization of labor, we have infrastructure people. Who's an infrastructure person here? Who's an application developer? Okay? I mean, it's obvious that neither of you can succeed without each other. But we have this notion of specialization, right? Specialization of labor. You are Charlie Chaplin on the production line turning a bolt called infrastructure. Congrats. What we've already made clear is that the success of your company, the success of your career is fundamentally going to be predicated upon your ability to be able to create products that change super quickly. It's not going to be predicated upon your ability to become a super specialist in turning the bolts. Right? Now that is a fundamental change. So silos not only slow you down, but what they also do is they also reduce confidence in the system. Silos create supervision. Silos beget supervision. Who's in testing? Anyone? Obviously not. Yeah. Either that or all of you test continuously. You all test continuously? No? Yes. Some people saying yes, some people saying what's testing. Some of that is testing. But either way, when you have a step in a process and work needs to be passed from one person to another person, there's another person who sits above it, making sure that that event happened properly. And sometimes, if you didn't fill out the form or you didn't do the thing properly, the work gets passed back, right? That slows shit down, right? It also means that someone who's doing something can assume that there will be a checker, right? And that creates completely different behavior in the organization, and that's not what you're looking for. Who's been involved in a 3-year project? Oh, be honest, come on. Did it back. Yeah, come on here. Yeah, I have. Okay, so part of my world, where I come from, there's big banking transformations, so big core bank transformations. I've been involved about half a dozen. Each of them took maybe 2-3 years. We started with a spec, right? Ended up with something that was roughly 5 times the price, completely different spec. Normally, some senior executives survive in the process. 3-year project. Yet we had processes in place that were designed to tell us that we could manage the risk of the project. Who's ever been on a long project like that and actually had according to the original definitions of success? Anyone? Never happens. Can't happen. Just can't. Literally cannot. Why? Because when you anticipate the future, you shape the future with the past. You shape it based on what you know now. Right? So we start creating these long roadmaps for products, these long imaginative ideas. It's great to have a vision, but to start creating something that you need to become fulfilled means that the future that you think you are preparing for is really based on the assumptions that you are making about the past that you've been involved in. So that's one of the core reasons why we break work up into small pieces. But can you see why, based on the fact that value is continuous, that you have to have work in small pieces? Because that's literally the unit of value. The unit of value is a small thing. Why? Because customers are capricious. They change their minds. Right? That's what we're saying. So you now have to create, you have to have the ability to have the skills to create a high velocity software development capability that can change features, create new features based on what you learn from customers because they're switching off. But just as fast as they switch your product, they'll switch back. You need to be able to create software development processes that can support that. You as people need to be able to improve as that happens. So I promised to talk about the 2 product principles. Now, here's something interesting. We all know we're here, right? Complex, inconsistent waterfall. Or said another way, complex, crap, and slow. Which is kind of the legacy world that we all come from. Yeah? It wasn't complex, crap, and slow when we started that. We thought it was cool. But it kind of got that way. And we know we're going somewhere, and we've spoken a little bit about that. And I work a lot with large enterprises that set up these teams to do cool things. See that little red box over there? Turns out that. So, that long rectangle, imagine you put a little team together. And that team, you told them, listen guys, we're going to go and start doing DevOps. Who's been told that? Who's been told you like the DevOps? Yeah? Congrats. Okay. So what happens? You're in the lunchroom, sitting there, eating your DevOps lunch. Obviously, you're not sitting with the other guys. Because you're DevOps. You go over to the other lunch table and you start telling these guys, hey, we've got this thing, we've got chef, and we've got this other stuff, and it's awesome, it's fast. And they go, yeah, sure. I've got this thing called ITIL, I've got this compliance dudes, the secret compliance people sitting in the audience that aren't announcing themselves. They want us to do a whole bunch of things that will never work here. It's tissue rejection, right? It's pretty easy to start transformation by getting a special group of elite people to go behind enemy lines and do cool things. That is totally different from transforming the core. So that big rectangle there is in a place that I call the operating chasm. This is the chasm that you have to cross. Transformation means, in one simple concept, the scaling of capabilities across the organization. The only way that you get to do that is, instead of getting 20 people to create some forum or a case study to work out what is ITIL in a DevOps world, what is systems management in a DevOps world. I'm sure you have these things, these kind of, these groups that go out and try and investigate. Try and investigate what is the answer. The only way that you will find this is exactly the same way that you find what customers want, which is by doing it. You want to create many, many iterations, many experiments for how these teams that you're creating, you guys have done some incredible work, how these teams that you're creating, how they will work in the existing environment. Anyone can create something brand new and shiny by completely ignoring what is there today. Your job is not to do that. Your job is to transform the core of your business. And as an old bank transformation dude, let me tell you this. It's going to take a long time for that core banking application to move. There will be a value chain, and that value chain will always terminate from a product perspective in some product system. That's probably older than some of you, right? Your job, what DevOps is about transforming your organization. One of the core things you guys have to learn is how to begin to operate within teams that have to make these decisions, these compromises. It's so easy to be able to say everything new will do it all. It's so much more difficult. It requires a profound understanding and a really mature ability of your team to be able to negotiate with the service management guy. How much are you going to be updating the configuration item of service now? The compliance person, well, we can't tell you exactly that we're going to have 100% fit, but we can tell you that we'll definitely have these things done. How do I show you that that's okay? These are different behaviors. Can you see that? Does that make sense? Yeah? People just what the two product principle says is you are always shipping two products. You are always shipping two products. When you ship a product with a feature, what you're doing is you're shipping it so that you're learning about what happens, right? In production. You're learning about what's happening in the market. But what else are you learning? You're also, at that same time, just the same way as you're shipping the security requirements, because it's all code, you're actually also working on improving your ability to operate as a team. Because the one thing you can be sure of, and a really great example is, what's the difference between Yahoo and Google? Same technology, both use Yahoo. Brand, teams. The Google teams are constantly innovating, constantly getting better at being a team, right? So the two-product principle is something that we often forget when we're shipping product, when we're talking about high-velocity software development process. You want to create high-velocity software development, but you don't want to just be the same team after a year of shipping product. You want to be a better team. That's about learning. So if you think that what DevOps means is just getting better at chef, you're mistaken. Sure, gotta have chef. But you've also got to be improving and developing your ability to be able to learn and improve as a team. One of the things that we do at Chef, and the practice that I manage as a chef, is kind of helping you do that. So I have people who are edging towards me on stage, and That medium-height red-headed woman scares me. I'm just going to be completely clear. So I'd just like to say thank you. Please attend the sessions afterwards. You'll see some sessions on what the tools look like that enable this high-velocity development process. Some tools that help you deliver compliance at velocity. And I'll be talking with some of you about ideas and how to drive and create some of that team capability that we need. Thanks very much for your time.
Okay, so I've asked Justin to stay because I feel bad rushing him off, so I'm gonna let you stay. You get more stage time. You don't have to do anything. Just okay. Now, so we're gonna do a raffle now. We have we've got some great prize packs here from Alpha One. Yeah, you get to pick the winner. I'm gonna mix it. We each have one job.
You want to have a negotiation, anyone?
Okay, so you should have received a ticket when you came in, and I'm gonna let Justin pick one out here.
This will be for the binder of the contract.
All right, this is for a binder. It's like a folio and a coffee mug or a canoe mug. You can put coffee or whatever you want in it. I don't want to tell you.
Justin.
Okay,
I'll just read out the number.
yes.
712230.
Anyone?
There we go. All right. Yeah.